You heard earlier this evening from Congressman Bob Good in Virginia about why the debt deal that Kevin McCarthy has worked out with the White House is no good. So let's hear the other side of that conversation with Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, who says that pragmatic Republicans should be on board with this. Congressman, thanks for joining us. You know, no one ever wins awards or headlines in this town by being pragmatic.
Well, and I wouldn't say it would just be pragmatists who would like this. I would say true conservatives everywhere should rejoice this deal. No respect to Bob Good, but I think he is letting perfect be the enemy of the good. This is the single biggest Republican victory on any spending deal in my lifetime for 4 reasons. Number one, it is the single largest reduction in spending in American history. Number two, it is the single largest rescission or clawback of money from the executive branch in American history. In fact, it's bigger than all rescissions in the past combined. Number three, this will unlock American energy because of streamlined environmental siting to a greater degree than we have seen since 1970. And it is the most substantial improvement to welfare reform. It's going to make sure people get back to work, bigger than anything we've seen since 1996. This is a good deal for true conservatives.
There's one red meat item in particular that sticks out to a lot of people, and that has to do with the IRS agents, the 87,000 or so. Now, I know that Speaker McCarthy has said that the first installment of money that was to hire the new IRS agents has been taken off the table. Can you give us some clarity on that number and how many agents? Because we're getting competing information here. And Kevin Roberts at Heritage Foundation, I know a gentleman that you have great respect for, he said, hold on a minute, when we look at this thing, absolutely there's going to be new IRS agents hired. So what's the reality?
Well, of course, we've got to be able to fight and win year after year. We did get the new $80 billion to the IRS zeroed out in year one. Those dollars phase in over time. And listen, the one thing that the liberals have understood for 60 years is the power of incrementalism. They have grown government a little bit every year. Conservatives, I think, too often have tried to throw the Hail Mary pass. That pass has been incomplete, and then we get nothing. And so we need to, I think, reimagine the power of incrementalism by, listen, let's beat them on the IRS agents this year. And then let's be committed and let's be strident enough, dedicated enough to then beat them next year and the year after that. We've also done one big win here that I don't think people fully understand. We have made not just the year one funding, but we've also taken $20 billion of IRS funding and made Democrats move that funding away from their priority on IRS and made them spend it elsewhere to offset Republican cuts. And so in essence, we're making the Democrats steal from their own IRS priorities to hold the line in other areas. It is, I think, a pretty substantial success that is going to mean that the IRS is not going to be harassing middle-class families.
What do you say to those that would argue that politically, next year during the presidential election, Republicans have sort of lost the moral high ground on spending because we own this now? If Republicans go along with this, and Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker, negotiated this on behalf of Republicans, we can't just point at Democrats and say, look, you guys are spending like drunken sailors. You're spending money we don't have. You're printing it in the basement because now it's our spending as well.
Larry, this has never been done before. Never before in American history have we saved $2.1 trillion within the 10-year window. It's the greatest ever deficit reduction in American history. I will run on that all day long because when the Democrats had one-party control, they were able to do the American Rescue Plan that I voted against, $1.9 trillion. They were able to do the Inflation Reduction Act that I voted against, $1.5 trillion. They were able to do the Omnibus at $1.7 trillion that I voted against. And so we are going to be able to claim that we are changing the culture of Washington rather than by increasing spending by $6 trillion. We are going to be reducing it by trillions. Let's take that message to the American people. And that's where I think Bob Good is making such a terrible mistake. He does not understand that it took us 60 years to get into this problem. It will take us a few years to get out. We're not going to do it all in one day. That is not how government works, particularly when we barely control 1/2 of 1/3 of government. This is a big victory.
Well, and as you know, Congressman, Mr. Good is not alone. It's now up to, I believe, 16 Republicans who have said they're not on board with this, including Chip Roy, who I think you'd agree is a pretty honest dealer. he makes a pretty smart argument. I'd love for you to respond to it. He said, listen, the government grew 40% during COVID-19, and that pandemic is over. What's the argument against going back to pre-COVID spending? It grew because we were in the middle of an emergency. The emergency's over. Let's go back to pre-COVID spending.
Chip Roy is a friend of mine. I respect Chip Roy. That's exactly what I want to happen. There's no reasonable people would agree with that statement, that we would agree with the values of Chip and with the values of Dusty Johnson. We should cut government even more. We need to be smart enough to understand that we have got to take this win and that we have got to go get another one tomorrow and another one next week and another win next month. If Chip Roy thinks that this is going to be easy, he's mistaken. Again, it took 60 years for liberals to get their wins. Let's be resolute, smart enough, and wise enough to put together a series of wins. This is a huge first step.
Lay out for us what the process looks like now, because other critics of this bill, and again, my role here is to get as much information to our viewers and the American people as possible. They'll say, listen, you've now given a $4 trillion expansion to the debt limit. That takes us past next year into 2025. That means Republicans can't keep coming back to Biden saying, we can't spend anymore. We're hitting the ceiling. You know, every time you hit that ceiling, it means you get to negotiate down more. Now you've lost that window for 2 years.
That's exactly right. We're going to, not that we lose the window. We position that window at a time of maximum leverage for Republicans. In November, we're going to win the United States Senate. And in November, I think we have an exceptionally good chance to win the presidency. America will have come together to embrace and to endorse the kind of fiscal responsibility that we are embracing with this deal. They'll understand that this is one step. It's not sufficient. It is one step, and that they are going to vote for us to take a second and third step. This is much better than trying to have this fight with Joe Biden down the stretch of a presidential campaign where he will have no interest at all in conceding. Let's get this guy out of the picture. Let's get unified Republican control, and then let's solve the problem.
One more political question here. You talk about winning the Senate in November of 24. It would have been easier if Joe Manchin had some trouble at home, but part of this deal gives him a gift, a pipeline, which, by the way, home of Keystone, I bet you would have liked to have a pipeline restored in South Dakota, but instead it was Joe Manchin who got that pipeline. Was that a smart political move? It would have been nice to have him on his heels next November.
I get it. Everybody always wants to look at everything as politics. I'm not going to hurt American energy independence. I'm not going to attack the rule of law. I'm not going to hurt the people of West Virginia and Pennsylvania just because it puts Joe Manchin in a box. We're better than that. Conservatives, principles-based people are better than that. I think people of real value will look at that and say, the Mountain Valley Pipeline got dozens of permits. Year after year after year. They beat all of their opponents in court every single time. The rule of law indicates that when they've checked all the boxes, they should be allowed to build. We should not allow an overreaching, overarching, over-enthusiastic liberal bureaucracy to drag a beneficial project into oblivion. This project should move forward. It will unlock American energy. It's the right thing to do. And I'm sorry, I just got to care more about those values than any particular election for any particular person.
Well, for people who love politics and love the legislative process and the bare knuckle aspects of Washington, D.C., this is a fascinating week. Congressman Johnson, we appreciate you joining us, and we're eager for that vote tomorrow. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.